Me,
Say that again.
you got me for the interview, and
Hmm.
whatever you want to do, it's fine.
Yes, it's recording now.
Okay, good,
How has your day been?
good, good. Relaxing and getting things done here and there.
Cool.
I'm retired now, so I'm not working regularly,
Uh,
but I do a lot of volunteer work and stuff.
yeah, I remember I met you at the Intrepid.
Yes, that's my big thing.
Okay. So is it okay if you could tell me your life before the Vietnam War?
Sure, sure. And yeah, you can. I'll if there's anything that I feel uncomfortable with, I'll let you know.
Okay. So so can you tell me your life before you entered the Vietnam War?
So I had graduated, or I was graduated from high school in January of 1967. And so I was pretty much, and then I signed up in that spring. So I actually went into the Navy, and I think it was just right at the first week of May of 1967. So before that, I was pretty much, just high school student.
Okay.
I mean, I had a fairly ordinary life. I grew up in Queens. I was born in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm 73 years old now. And I did, well, I was actually like in my junior and senior year of high school, I started working part-time and then full-time at a factory company, the Staple Company, actually, in Long Island City in Queens. And I grew up in Jackson Heights, even though I was born in Baltimore. My family moved from there up to New York right about a year after I was born. And well, that's pretty much it. So most of the time I was a student or doing different jobs, like in the summer. And I used to work in a summer camp for a while, in the summers, and pretty much ordinary things like that.
What was your family like?
So my father was an immigrant. He was from China. He was born and raised in China, and he came here when he was very young. My mother was born here in New York, and but she was raised in Trinidad and in the Caribbean, and then she ended up back in New York, and they had moved to Baltimore for a short while, and that's when I came into the picture. I was the youngest of three brothers, and then we all moved back to New York, and that's pretty much, we first lived in Manhattan, and then moved out to Queens, and that's where I pretty much I spent most of my formative years and growing up in Jackson.
Where did you go to school?
I went to I started out in a Catholic school. At different schools. I did a mix of public and private, Catholic schools. And then eventually I was graduated from Newtown High School in Queens. I don't think it's there anymore, but it used to be sort of an academic school. And then I didn't go to college until after I got back. I went to college on the GI Bill.
Okay. Were you married before you left for the Vietnam War?
No, when I went into the war, I was single. I was lucky that way because I didn't have, any family to worry about, personal family. Like,
Mhm.
I didn't even really have a steady girlfriend, so to speak. I was free to go, you know. And then I didn't have to worry about, you know, close family at home.
Um, were you drafted or did you volunteer?
So I volunteered, but I knew that I was going to be drafted anyway.
Mm.
So I knew I had to do something. And the way I knew that is because most of my male friends were disappearing and going, meaning that they were going into the military. I would say all of my male friends were drafted, except for maybe one or two. I'd say maybe the most others, you know, were drafted. Um, so just a word about the draft. In the early draft during the Vietnam War, the way it worked was they just sent you a letter to people, you know, to draft you. But it turned out, you know, as it continued on, I think it started earlier, a few years earlier. People noticed that only kids in certain areas were actually being drafted, working class areas and so forth, minority neighborhoods and so forth. And so when people in my neighborhood, which was pretty much a sort of working class neighborhood, mostly Irish and Italian and other European groups, you know, that had immigrated and, you know, in the generation before, those kids were all getting called in. And so I figured, well, it's coming. I know it's coming. I didn't mind going in. I didn't have any concerns about the war, or I didn't protest, or I wasn't against the war per se. I trusted the leadership to, you know, for knowing what they're supposed to be doing, and you know that this, if they said, you know, if the country, if the nation was putting out the call, I took that as you know, doing my duty. So I decided that maybe I should just check around, go to the different recruiters and talk to them and see, you know, what they had to offer. And then I realized that the only way I could really also, you know, at the same time, like go in and give my time, the you know, bright years of my life, you know, I wanted something in return for that. And so I was hoping to learn a skill so that after I got out of the military, or when the war ended, I would have some sort of skill or something to do for a living, you know, to make a living that could transfer into civilian life.
Okay, what was the training like?
Well, what happened was I went into the Navy. So the Navy is a different training than some of the other services, particularly like the Army and the Marines. And and then also I was assigned to go out to San Diego. So at Camp Pendleton out there, which is mostly Marines, they had at the time also a naval training facility, basic training. They don't, I believe it's closed down now, but so I got to go to San Diego, which was a big thrill for me as a young New Yorker, going, you know, never traveling outside of New York and all that. So I ended up in San Diego. The training was, it was, you know, it wasn't that bad per se. It was you know, arduous and meticulous, and lasted about 3 months. A lot of physical training, a lot of just learning the basics of being a sailor in the Navy. And I guess the interesting part was that by ending up on the West Coast, that meant the Pacific, and that also meant the Vietnam theater, which was over in the West Pacific. I went through the training pretty well. There was a little bit of a time when I was kind of not sure what was going on. I felt, there was a lot of nitpicking type of things, but they do that to accustom you to stress. And that's the whole idea, is the vigorous training, marching, things that seem ridiculous, but really the point of it is to ensure that you can maintain your focus under stress. And basically you just learn all the basic things about being in the military, things like just how to take care of your uniform, cleaning yourself. In boot camps, you get people from all over the nation and coming from all kinds of backgrounds. And so sometimes you get people who have very little personal training and background, they don't even know how to really keep clean, themselves clean and polished, so to speak. And they have to be taught that, I remember seeing a film on how to brush your teeth, things like that. So, we went through all that, and we were basically told, now, just because you got the uniform and you know how to march and things like that, you're really not a sailor until you get out to the fleet and spend some time out in the fleet. And I think that was pretty true, so they were pretty good, pretty squared away with us about the training and getting us ready really for a more stressful situations.
Right. After the basic training was complete, what unit were you placed in?
So my first assignment was going to Midway Island. Midway Island is an island that's sort of at the very end of the chain of the Hawaiian Islands, which are out, of course, in the middle of the Pacific. And there's an island, actually two islands there, but they're called the Midway Islands, and they're called Midway because they're midway between the west coast of the United States or North America and the east coast of Asia, which would be like Japan and China and so on. So it's right smack dab in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And I was assigned to go there, and for more, really, I think, just test training, again, to see how well we took stress and could work under stress and be relied on, no matter what, We were originally supposed to be there, I think, just a month or so, or 2 months, and we ended up there. I'd say it was a good 3 months. Basically what I did there was, as this kind of training and placing you under stress, is they had us working in the mess hall, basically acting as bus boys and cleaning the mess hall and preparing it for each meal during the day. And that's like 4 meals a day. So we would do a 12-hour shift, which just later on turned out to be the same number of hours in the combat zone that we were working. And anyway, so we would basically provide the meals, to facilitate the meals for all of the military people that were traveling to Vietnam and coming back from Vietnam, because a lot of those people would pass through Midway on aircraft. So we had to do that under very strict conditions. So the stress was really like trying to get the job done as quickly as necessary, as determined, and to get it done absolutely perfectly. Every day, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day.
Okay. When were you deployed to Vietnam?
So by the fall, well, let's see, by the time I was finished at Midway, they finally gave us orders to move on, and I was assigned to the United States ship Hancock. It was CVA 19. The connection with like the Intrepid is that the Intrepid is number 11, the Hancock was number 19, and they were both Essex class aircraft carriers. So the Hancock was an attack aircraft carrier, meaning at the time the word attack meant it was one of the aircraft carriers that would be on point, so to speak, or the tip of the spear in any naval operation. The other determination for an aircraft carrier would be support aircraft carrier, which might do more anti-submarine warfare. But we kind of did it all, you know, and mostly the more aggressive type of action. So I was assigned there and stayed on the ship for about 14 months.
Did you and your unit do anything before you went to wire, meaning going into enemy territory or going to fight the enemy?
So we did our training off the coast of California, and basically what we would do is air operations training to ensure that they're able to accommodate the planes that would carry out the air operations against the enemy, in this case, the North Vietnamese, and whatever elements in the South Vietnam area. Then we went straight over to Hawaii first, made a stop there, and then from Hawaii, we went straight to Vietnam. So there was 2 locations off the coast of Vietnam where the United States Navy, the blue water sailors, meaning that the sailors that were on ships in deep water, that they would operate from. Those 2 stations, those locations was in the South and in North. So in the South, it was a Dixie station, and then in the North, it was Yankee Station. So my ship, the Hancock, was at Yankee Station. And the idea was that we would have 2 aircraft carriers there, both working air operations for 12 hours, you know, and then switch off to the other aircraft carrier, and then go back to the first aircraft carrier, and it would go back and forth like that. So there was 24-hour coverage in terms of air support for the ground troops, and then also attacking identified targets in Vietnam, either North or South.
You don't have to answer this question if it makes you uncomfortable, but is there a battle or fight you remember?
Not specifically in terms of like an Army person or a Marine might remember a battle, like, say, for example, like Khe Sanh, which occurred in 1968, which was the same year that we went out there. We actually got there after that battle, so we didn't actually directly support Americans there. But our job was a little different because the Vietnamese did not have a really strong navy per se. In fact, they didn't really have any large ships, certainly no aircraft carriers. So our job was providing that air support. At a moment's call, we would send out missions throughout the Vietnamese area. in return, we did not get any hostile fire directly back at us on the ship. I don't know why the Vietnamese never attempted to really attack us directly. I believe it was partly because of politics. I think if they attacked one of the aircraft carriers, they might have realized that it might have influenced the public opinion of Americans, because an aircraft carrier is considered, I'm not sure if you know this, but if anyone's, if you show this to anybody, they should understand that a United States aircraft carrier, in effect, is like a piece of the United States territory that on that ship, and it's treated as such by the military and by the United States government. So wherever it goes, it doesn't matter where it is. It is like a piece of American real estate, and it would be defended as such. And I think they might have realized the political ramifications of attacking directly one of the aircraft carriers. Another possibility is because we had by then a fairly strong sort of a missile, missile defense systems on smaller ships, sort of like like destroyers and so forth. So that might have made it difficult for them to really throw anything at us. So we didn't worry too much about pitched battle, so to speak. We worried about our own planes coming back and damaging the ship, crashing on deck. Sometimes the planes come back, they still have ordnance or bombs on them, and it could just cause a major disaster on the ship. For example, on the USS Forrestal, which was a ship that was out in the same area where we were the year before, they had just a mishap, basically, with a rocket on the flight deck, and it caused a tremendous amount of damage and took the lives of over somewhere around 134 sailors. So it could be dangerous that way.
Wow.
Yeah, so so we didn't really get into a pitched battle situation, but I could tell you that what happens is you have when you first start working, when you first get there and you start working at your job, at whatever it is, in relation to the air operations, for the first, I'd say, 2 or 3 weeks, you're very motivated. You just feel like you're full of energy, and you can really tackle all the work that you need to do. But after about 2 or 3 weeks of 14-hour day or more days, because even though we're doing air operations for 12 hours, it doesn't mean that you shut down and suddenly you just sit around and do nothing and sleep or something. We were always constantly short on sleep. I was at a point where if I stopped moving, if I had to keep moving, keep walking, and keep in motion, because if I stopped, I would fall asleep. Literally, I was that exhausting. And then you have to always keep focused, on your job. So, after a while, it just gets to you, so to speak. So, yeah.
Were you injured when you were you injured when you were at Vietnam?
So luckily, I didn't get any serious injuries. I can't say that there was anything that was long lasting or anything like that. I mean, there would be little accidents or something. Like one time I just backed into a plane wing, and they can be very sharp. And it was a very painful experience, to say the least. The funniest thing was, we were doing night operations, and I was walking on the flight deck, and I just literally walked off the flight deck because I couldn't see where I was going. It was so dark. Luckily, I landed on a catwalk, which was about maybe 10 or 15 feet below the surface that I walked off. And, you know, even though it hurt quite a bit and I laid there for a while, if I had gone into the water, nobody would have known that I was gone. That would have been the end of it. You know, they don't check, you know, where is everybody until the next morning. So, but no, look, unfortunately, I didn't have to worry about that kind of thing.
Okay. Okay. You don't have to answer this question if you have to, but or I mean, if you don't want to, but did you have any friends that were lost in the war? You don't have to answer if you don't want to.
Oh, that's okay. No, I didn't have any personal friends that were lost. I was very fortunate again that way. Although there was one friend that I had in boot camp. He was my closest friend, and I know that he went to the riverboats. So the United States Navy also had Navy, you know, representation on the rivers in Vietnam, and they would the sailors would ride around on these patrol riverboats, and they called them the brown water Navy as opposed to the blue water Navy. And the last I heard, he had gone to that, and I tried to look him up and everything. I couldn't find his name in like the list of the dead in Washington, so I think he made it through.
Mm-hmm. Okay. When were you discharged?
I was discharged 1971, so I did a 4-year hitch. Generally, in the Navy, if you're a volunteer, you do 4 years, and you know, of course, they try to get you to sign up again and all that. But I left after 4 years, so yeah. So I was out in early 1971.
Okay. Did you have any long or short-term injuries?
Nothing physical. And what I didn't realize though is I had a post-traumatic stress basically, but I didn't really realize it until in the last 10 years or so, when the Afghanistan, Iraq veterans were coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I say that is because I heard what actually really opened it up was like, I was listening to a radio show, I think it was NPR, and they were talking to some of the veterans about post-traumatic stress syndrome. And they were just describing it. And then they used a term called moral injury. And they were describing, you know, all of their issues and feelings and everything. And I realized, holy mackerel, that's me. That was, and I suddenly realized that that's what I had been feeling all that time. So back in the Vietnam War, we didn't really have, in fact, we didn't even call it post-traumatic stress syndrome or anything like that. It was basically battle fatigue, you know, that sort of thing. They have different names, you know, over the different wars. And so when people came back, there was really no concern about that kind of thing. People didn't, there were no programs that I knew of. Maybe there might have been something, but it wasn't a big deal then. It wasn't something that everybody talked about or heard about. And yeah, so basically, like, what it was well, first of all, when I came back for a good 12 years, I couldn't listen to another jet I couldn't listen to a jet that was in the air without watching it. And it was just a natural reflex by then, because on the ship, we always watched the planes to see what was going on with them and what it was going to do. Was it going to blow up? Is it going to crash? Is it going to, this sort of thing? Is it one of ours? It took about 12 years before I could, like just hear a plane in the sky and just not be bothered by it. But even back here in New York, for example, I mean, I would hear a plane jet if it was a little bit above in terms of volume. I could literally feel my body just changing, like as the adrenaline and whatever else, starts changing and getting my body ready for whatever is to come. As I say, like it wasn't until like maybe 10 years ago, like, so we're talking about, 2010, those years around there, where after listening to stuff about PTS and so on, did I realize a lot of my psychological behavior was really probably resulting from the stress of the air operations and also just the noise. I mean, they talk about like traumatic. There's a physical aspect to traumatic brain injury, which is the constant. It could be a massive event where the trauma is all at once on the brain, or it could be more chronic, which is what we had exposure to on a daily basis. Jet engines, all day long, that sort of thing, and the idea that of any one of these planes could have an accident and cause a disaster, and so this it's a different kind of stress, and so but it has a very similar result, and also the idea of the moral injury aspect, realizing that we weren't in a stand-up fight like in like the Intrepid. A lot of the sailors in World War II, when the Intrepid was attacked by kamikaze or otherwise, it's easier to really know who the enemy is and what you're doing, and you're fighting for your life, you're fighting for your own survival. But in Vietnam, on the aircraft carrier, doing air ops off Vietnam, we didn't feel like our lives were at risk directly to the enemy as much, but we knew what we were doing, and we were doing 90 missions a day, and we were dropping weapons that are banned today, like cluster bombs. They're just talking about cluster bombs being used in Ukraine. Well, we used them in Vietnam, and it was no big deal, but now they're banned. So. Well, it resulted, the moral injury is obviously realizing that we were, these bombs are indiscriminate. You're killing innocent people as well. And, if you don't believe in what the war is about, it can bother you. I was raised as a Christian, thou shalt not kill. And that could be a problem.
What was your life like after the Vietnam War ended? You don't have to answer this question if you're uncomfortable.
Okay. What was my war life like after?
Yes.
So I was very fortunate. I mean, I did have the PTS, so I had some issues, but nothing that really stopped me from living a life. But I did feel the need. I kind of took it and tried to be more constructive with the issues that I had. And so at a given point, I decided to go to college. I wanted to learn more about science and technology. And so I went on the GI Bill and got a Bachelor of Science degree, which was a lot of work for a kid that just barely made out of high school. And I didn't have a really good academic background, but I worked hard at it and got my degree. And then I decided that a good thing to do for a number of reasons, but also because of the war and because of participating in the slaughter, I like to call it. I decided that I should work in a hospital, helping people rather than other options. So that's what I did. I became a safety officer at Bellevue Hospital in New York. I worked there for 7 years and then continued on from other hospitals, big hospitals in New York and New Jersey. My job was basically managing the occupational safety and health programs and environmental health and safety programs of the hospital. And I also felt that it helped my PTS, even though I didn't really understand it in that term. I just kind of felt, oh, this is good. I like this kind of work, and I just left it at that. And that's because there was a lot of emergency response responsibilities. So I was the one that I managed the fire protection, for example. So whenever there was a fire in the hospital, I would respond to that. And I oversaw the everything from preparation for fire prevention to fire response and to investigations to determine what happened, and then adjusting safety policies and procedures and so forth. So all of that, was very demanding and somewhat stressful, but I needed to do that in order to keep the adrenaline levels up, which would help me to feel normal. Because once you go to that kind of thing, big part of that PTS is you're trying, you're not even thinking about it, but you're trying to keep up that adrenaline flow. And because that's the only thing that makes you feel normal. And I'm just really learning now, since I've been retired, how, a lot of this I'm just starting to really fully realize, and I'm just learning to decompress from all of that.
Okay, were you given any medals or awards?
Yeah, so I can actually show you some. Let me just put you up here for a second. I think I can turn this around, all right?
Okay.
Might be able to turn this around. Let's see. Oh, you can see I'm not.
Let's say that again.
Oh, okay. You can see I'm not real familiar with this.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a background. Okay, well, let me do it this way. So I'll just show you some of the medals.
Okay.
Stuff. This is a picture of me.
That's very cool.
That was I was 19 years old, just out of boot camp. So you can see down here, this is the wings and the hammers. So that was where, because I wanted to learn to be a mechanic, an aircraft mechanic. And but after the war, I didn't want to go near a plane.
Okay.
It was it just meant death to me. So these are the medals here. So this is for joining, for volunteering in time of war.
Wow,
This is the campaign medal for Vietnam.
that's
So
so
this,
cool.
yeah, this is it's got 2 bronze stars for 2 tours,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the Armed Forces Expedition Medal, and
Mm-hmm.
that was a special operation that I will tell you about before the interview is over,
Okay.
because it was thing. And this one is for expert rifleman.
Mm-hmm.
Was an expert with a rifle. And then up here is the Vietnam Campaign Medal from the Vietnamese government.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a personal for personal valor from the Vietnamese government.
Wow.
And I kind of like to think of that one because of when we helped save a pilot. I'll tell you that story too. And up here,
Okay.
these are air crew wings for being on an air crew. And after I came back to the States, I was in Florida and flying in a helicopter,
Mm-hmm.
doing some few. These are just my, this is my job here, the wings and the hammers. And then I came out as a 3rd class petty officer. And then these are state medals. So here, because I joined up in New York, grew up in New York.
Mm-hmm.
So I got the New York State medals, and also the New Jersey, because I've been living in New Jersey for over 30 years. So
Wow.
these, and this one is here. This one is for Korea.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you about that. With the expedition medal, and this is just a New Jersey medal here. So yeah, that's pretty much it. On this one is the one I really enjoy the most, because first of all, it was the only one that was actually given to me by another human. The rest was my work. But this medal awarded to me in 2003 was a medal that my family actually got to see me get. So my 2 kids actually were there to see me receive this. And it's the Townie Award for Distinguished Military Service.
That's
in
awesome.
Morris County, New Jersey.
Mhm.
And that was a very happy moment, because my children and my wife were there. So
Yeah. Did you attend ceremonies honoring Vietnam War veterans like yourself?
I did. And in fact, well, first of all, there wasn't much though, like right after the war
Mm-hmm.
or during the war. But right out some years after the war, there was, I think it was in 1985, maybe, I'm thinking, something like that. It was actually a first Vietnam parade, Vietnam Wars, war veterans parade that was done in New York. And so I had gone there just to kind of watch and see what it was about. But since then, of course, different memorials came up. When the Washington, D.C. memorial was put up, I eventually got down there to see it. And yeah, different things. I've yet to go to the New Jersey ones over here. I've seen the New York memorial, New York City, and so forth. So
Wow.
yeah, there's now. We got treated badly after and during the war, but now everybody loves us. So I don't know.
Yeah, I
One day-
remember some of the Vietnam War veterans were treated badly once they came back.
Yep. Yeah.
In fact, I
Yeah.
would say that again.
I was just gonna say one day they love you, the next day they hate you, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, during the Veterans Day parade in 2021, I actually met 2 Vietnam veterans after the parade, and I asked if I could interview one of them, and one of the Vietnam War veterans said no because he said he was treated badly when he came back to the United States. So I was okay with that. And I thanked him for his service, and I saluted him and left it at that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people came back messed up one way or another. I mean, in terms of mentally and everything, it was a lot of that. It's yeah. Unfortunately, it's just a lot of that. I mean, so for a little while, like when I was going to college, because I was going under the GI Bill, I also attended some meetings of veterans that were also trying to get some education, and I just sitting there in these meetings, it was like obvious that got a lot of screwed up people. It's a tough thing. For example, I wore my dress blues only one time, right? And that's the blue naval uniform, dark blue. Had my ribbons and stuff like that. And this was after coming back. I was in San Francisco on the boardwalk, and next thing I know, it was kind of weird. It was just started out like with one person, and then I was surrounded by like 20, 30 people, really just kind of like yelling at me. So, and I was arguing with them, and like blah blah blah, and what do you hate me just because I'm wearing a uniform? It's like, so eventually, it went on for about maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, it felt like. And that was it, like after that, I never wore my uniform again.
Oh my God. So
Yeah, it was, and that was lightweight. I mean, there was some ugly stories from a lot of guys, like in the way they were treated. So,
wow. Yeah,
but
some of them.
a lot of guys, there was a lot of guys probably deserved it too, though. There was a lot of atrocities over there. I mean, like in any war, but what are you going to do?
Yeah.
That's why war is so bad.
Yeah, it took from what I remember, it took the Vietnam War took 20 years. Cause like, so I'm trying to remember because for some it started in the I think somewhere in the 1950s or 60s and ended in 1975.
Yeah, yeah, it was sort of it kind of creeped up on us, um yeah, and the tragedy is we really only know what really happened now, especially after the 50-year mark, which was 50 years after 1968, which was 2018, and when a lot of Nixon's papers and Johnson's papers were released, and we found out a lot of what really went happened. And the National Archives, for example, they showed out, like they had an exhibition of key documents that came out all the way from the end of World War II, all the way up until the beginning of Vietnam. Was very interesting and put a lot of light on what actually happened and how we even got involved there with the Vietnamese. Because basically the Vietnamese people were just trying to be free of foreign, intrusion and ownership, and just like the Ukrainians, what they're doing today. That's in a way that, and the thing is that it wasn't such a simple thing that they were like the commies, and all this, the communists. It was they were actually pushed towards that because they had no other choice. There was no one else would recognize them. And the United States made a big mistake in the early days. It turns out, just a quick note, that it turns out that Roosevelt wanted them to be free. He said, literally, he just said, the French have been milking them long enough. It's time for them to be independent. And it got waylaid through politics and whatnot, particularly with France, that wanted to keep on holding Vietnam as a colony. And we got involved in that, and on the wrong side. And anyway, it went all the way to the end of the Vietnam War, and then there was this long transition or a point where we just many Americans were just so unhappy and still hating what happened, until now where they're friends. We're all friends again. like why couldn't we have done that in the first place?
Yeah.
But anyway, such is life. So yeah, so let's see. Did I go? What was your last question?
If you attended, okay, my last question was if you attended any ceremonies honoring Vietnam War veterans like yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was pretty much it, here and there. And then in 2012, I decided to see about volunteering at the Intrepid. So that's where I really got this, more into a routine and actually volunteering and helping out, talking to people about Vietnam, about being a sailor and all that kind of thing. And of course, eventually, that's how we got to meet on the Intrepid. And I'm glad to do that. I'm really, one of the things, going back to the 1967, one of the things about that is that as we were kids coming out of high school, and we knew nothing. There was no resources for information. There was no internet, nothing like that. So we didn't know what was going on. We didn't know what the war was about. We just, we knew nothing about war other than what we saw like on TV, which was like shows. There was Hollywood versions, which, are totally nonsense. And then, of course, there was small attempts at documentaries like Victory at Sea, which really wasn't much of, it didn't really tell you much. And it certainly didn't teach you anything about democracy and what we were fighting for, so I thought, well, the Intrepid, things like the Intrepid, memorials and stuff like that, that's what it's really for. It's for like people like myself to step up and say, you know what, if you want to know what it was like, ask. I'll tell you. Do you know what it's like in war? Do you want to know why you fight? Why do we fight and stuff like that? You just ask, and somebody's got to answer those questions, because otherwise, young people don't have any idea. Again, what's going on. As we did in the 1960s. So I'm happy to do this.
Yeah. I think that was all my questions.
Oh, okay. I did promise to tell you a couple of little stories. So I got an Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal. So in December of, let me crank it back a little bit.
Okay.
In January of 1968, by the way, 1968 was considered generally the height of the war. I guess it was the most battle action and so forth, whatever. Anyway, so around January, of course, that's when the Tet Offensive started, but also there was an attempt on decapitating the South Korean government. The North Koreans sent in a commando group from the north to attack the South Korean version of the White House. And they were going to basically snatch the president of South Korea and just try to destroy the top of the government. And then presumably after that, they could follow up with an attack on South Korea. Towards the end of the month, their aggressive behavior got to the point where the United States ship called the USS Pueblo was off the coast of North Korea in international waters, but they claimed that they were not. In any case, they attacked the ship. There were 83 officers and men on that ship. One sailor was killed outright during the attack. And then the captain of the boat surrendered the ship because he really didn't have a chance otherwise. They were all captured, 82 sailors and officers. They were brought to North Korea as well as the ship. Today, the ship is still there. And the North Koreans use it as a museum, as a trophy from what their incident with the United States. But the sailors, what happened was they were held prisoners for 11 months in North Korea. By December of 1968, the United States government decided it was time. They had enough, and so we got sent up. We were pulled off the line of operations in Vietnam. So we were conducting combat live operations, and then we stopped and we sailed up to North Korea. And on our way up there, we were preparing to use nuclear weapons. And off South Korea, just off between South Korea and North Korea, the South Korean authorities, high-ranking military personnel came aboard the ship to show unity with the United States. And we put on demonstrations of what our planes could do with conventional weapons, but we're ready to move to nuclear weapons. And the North Koreans got the message apparently, because in a short time afterward, suddenly 2 buses showed up at the DMZ between North and South, and off stepped the 82 sailors. They had been starved and tortured for 11 months while they were there. There was no fanfare, there was no explanation, no apologies, nothing. It came out in the news, but it was very short-lived. I guess at the time they didn't really want to talk about the use of nuclear weapons, but we were prepared to do it. And I was there, and I know that, what we were doing. There was also a bomber squadron that was brought in from the United States to Guam, and they were preparing also to attack. So it was a very special operation, and luckily it could have been a bluff, but I think even today, I don't think it was really. But fortunately, the North Koreans backed down and gave us back the sailors. And so there was no incident further. And we went back to Vietnam to continue our operations. So we were, for doing that, we got this, expeditionary medal, and later on a Korean Defense Medal. And then I think there was one other I was going to tell. Oh, so yeah, the Vietnamese valor thing. So there's no specific individual awarding of that medal to me per se, but I like to think of it as the valor that we took We meaning me and two other sailors, particularly. So we were doing night operations on the ship. One plane came in, it exploded on the flight deck, and there was a huge wall of fire across the entire landing deck area. And while that fire was burning, because there was just a faint light from that and the normal landing lights, we could see a parachute come down just over the bow of the ship. And it was the pilot. He had ejected from the plane just before it exploded. And his parachute came down, and the shroud lines got caught on the bow of the ship, right on the edge of the flight deck. And so he was dangling over the front of the ship above the water. And now we're cutting through the water at a pretty good speed. And it's at night. So if he'd gone in the water, it would have been the end of him. I myself and two other sailors ran up there and were the first to go grab the shroud lines to haul them back up. And it was, and then it was made easier when a few other sailors also came up behind us after we got there, and we were just holding them, and then we all pulled them in. And because of that, we got called into the flight deck control and congratulated by the flight deck control officer, shook hands, and that was it. So we didn't get any special medal or anything, or recognition for it, but I like to think that Vietnamese Valor medal was for that. So that was just another little contribution that I made. Let's see, what else can I say about the experience there? I don't know, you might be interested in knowing this. You're an African American, correct?
Mhm.
So there were African Americans on board, and I found it extremely difficult hearing their stories. The biggest problem that they had was because it was 1968. There was a lot of problems going on back home here, and here they were. We all were out there fighting, doing our part, and they would get letters of telling of what was going on back at home, and I could see on the faces of the African American sailors that I worked with how difficult it was to do your job and to keep going, regardless of the fact of what you were reading about from your loved ones back home. And that was another reality of that war, in terms of what was going on. It was a tough, even though the war was, I guess it was the first time, no, the second time, because in Korean War, yeah. So it was the second time where the military was actually integrated, and so it was quite an experience. All of that, just knowing some of the things that were going on all at once, things like that. I don't know what else. Is there anything you want to know else about the war per se?
No, I think that's it.
Yeah, I'm just looking through your questions here also. Yeah, I guess that pretty much covers all your questions. So what a lot of people, a question a lot of people like to ask of any interview or anything is, would you do it again? So of course I would step up to the plate for my country again. That I'm that type of person. To give you an example, like my brother, he was against the war. He didn't go. He, he dodged the draft. But I don't have any problem with that. It's not for everybody. And those that go should want to go. And I'd rather have somebody who wants to be there behind me than someone that doesn't want to be there behind me. My feeling is, I can do it. I'm willing. I have no problem doing what I call my duty. So I'll do it, and I'll do it for the both of us. And I think that's the way I feel about it. But of course, on the other hand, what I know now about that particular war and these wars that occur in generally, and what's been happening, it would be a difficult thing to think about. I mean, it's a hypothetical question, and I can only say that I can't really say, well, no, what I know now, would I have gone? I don't know. It's so hypothetical. It's not fair to even think about it to myself or to anyone else to say, because who knows? A lot of people didn't go. A lot of people that went to Canada were welcomed back. I don't think there was very many people that ever went to prison for refusing to go. I know that one person actually ended up being the president of the United States. and so he didn't go. And but I would do it again. I would do that part again. I still think the United States of America is worth fighting for. And somebody's got to do it. And I can do it. I have no problem with it. So, and I'm very happy that there's young people like you who are interested in just finding out about it. That's a great thing.
Yeah, I think my generation doesn't understand the risk and sacrifices people made to protect their country. And like I said, it's also a way to celebrate the memory of my late maternal grandfather, who was a World War II Army medic who was stationed in Japan in the post-war era.
Ah, yes. Okay. Yeah. I see.
Yep, unfortunately, he passed away in 2020.
Oh, okay. Was it COVID? I hope not.
No, it wasn't COVID.
Oh, okay, good. Oh, that's good. Yeah, it's that generation was they was it what Tom Brokaw, called them the greatest generation. Now, though, your generation is now the greatest generation, because your grandfather, they had the Great Depression, and they had World War II, but there's a lot more going on now.
Yep.
than some of the, that they never faced. So we got a new great generation with yourself and your fellow generational people. What may I ask? Aside from your grandfather, was there any reason why you were interested in the military aspect of history or whatever?
Finding out that my grandfather was a World War II veteran and getting interested in veterans overall is what got me interested in the military.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I remember what got me interested in veterans overall is my dad. He was watching a documentary called "A Live Day Memories Home from Iraq," and it got me interested. It got me interested because I'm hearing their stories and how they got injured was it was just incredible.
Yeah. You know what? Let me just hold on a second.
Okay.
So I would, I would recommend a book to you that you would not have heard of. It's not, one of these like big, publishing successes or anything like that.
Mhm,
But anyway, it's called Black Soldier of Mercy,
mhm.
and it's written by Joseph E. Brown. And I don't know if you can, let's see. Oh, it's from Writer. What's it? Right? Yeah, Writer Books,
Mhm.
Righther.
Okay.
So that's Black Soldier of Mercy, Joseph E. Brown, and it's about it's about African Americans in the Korean War, and it's really a really good book. It's his personal experiences there. I'll just read the forward real quick. Afro
Okay.
Americans have served their country well and played a significant role in the military during America's pre-revolutionary and post-revolutionary wars. On July 26, 1948, President Truman issued Executive Order 9981, establishing equality of treatment and opportunity in the armed forces of the United States. This executive order was reinforced by President Eisenhower, who formed the Air Force as a distinct military entity and dissolved the old Army Air Force. The Korea conflict proved their wisdom in the integration of the United States of America's military and dismantling of all Black military units. And those were the segregated units that he was talking about. So this is the book, and
Wow.
little backwards there, I guess. But it's really a good personal story of the experiences of being an African American in Korea in some of the most fierce action seen there. And he was a medic, Joe Brown, and I think he was from North Carolina.
You
But
say
it's
you
a good
found the Korean War?
in the Korean War, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So I would highly recommend it if you want to. I know, because I know you're covering like all the wars since World War II, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want to, I mean, it's not, I mean, he died some years ago, but so you couldn't get a live interview, but I think you can get as much out of this book.
Mm-hmm.
Gonna, if you want to talk to someone about the Korean War, that would be a good book to read.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
You're welcome.
Okay, okay, so I don't have any more questions.
Okay. Just a few questions about you, since it is an interview. Are you planning to do a report or something, or?
It's for my Girl Scout Gold Award project. So, like I said, I'm interviewing veterans from World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, global war on terror, and all military branch operations across all military branches, and putting the interviews on a website that I'm designing.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And after I achieve my Girl Scout Gold Award, I hope to contain interviews so I could add more to the website.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, like I said,
Hey,
say that again.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Sorry, what were you about to say?
Oh, I was just going to ask you, like, well, so are you in high school now, or
Yes, I'm in high school.
what year?
I'm a junior.
Oh, okay, good.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Yep.
just got another year, and are you planning to go to college?
Yes, I'm not sure which one though, because ever since I took the PSATs, I've been getting emails from colleges.
I see. Okay.
Hmm.
Well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I can tell you from my own experience,
Mhm.
good college education is worth it. It's um, and you know, STEM is good, but anything is good. You know, there's a big wide world. Once you get into college, you learn that it's like a door that opens up, and you can. There's so many that it's a door that opens up into other doors, and it just keeps going. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing, and of course nowadays, you know, a lot of people like try to even go to graduate school and all that. So
Mhm.
but it's good. It's good. So good luck with that.
Thank you. So like I said, I don't have any more questions.
Okay.
Um,
So then, thank you very much. And if
yeah.
you, I guess if you ever do a website or something, then
Hmm.
feel, was it part of your plan to like notify the interviewees? Uh,
Yeah, it's yeah, at the yeah, there are enough interviews. I'm gonna put them in the website or on the
oh,
website.
oh, I see. I could.
So,
Excellent.
yep. So, okay, thank you for your service in the military.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome very much. All right. So long, Shelby.
Okay,
Good luck.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Mhm.